I'm Josie Long, writer, stand-up comedian and museum enthusiast. We're looking at the Holburne Museum, Bath. It houses the art collection started by Sir William Holburne in 1793. Join us as we discover the hidden gems of this collection through the staff and volunteers who make this place tick day in, day out, as they share their favourite objects and personal picks. Let's delve deep into these incredible artefacts and explore stories from the Holburne Museum.
The museum feels rather like a sort of Georgian house. Many people come and think it was William Holburne's home, but actually it was the entrance to the pleasure gardens. It was a fun palace when it was built.
You've got that pairing between the old, the sort of neoclassical, and then something incredibly contemporary. And I think that sums up so much about what the Holburne's about. My name is Louise Campion, and I'm the Learning and Community Engagement Lead at the Holburne Museum.
Can you tell me about the piece that you've chosen?
This is a portrait miniature of Sir William Holburne, and it's by an artist called Charles Jagger. It's watercolour on elephant ivory, and it was painted in 1827. We have many miniature portraits. It's the equivalent of us having photos of loved ones on our phones. I do find myself standing in this gallery, surrounded by his objects, looking at this tiny little miniature. It's so alive.
It's a really good example of his tastes and kind of what the collection was based around.
We know him through the things he collected, all these different objects he has spied and spotted. And I think it's really important to acknowledge where the wealth and the opulence and the money that was used to buy some of these beautiful objects, where it came from, so that the whole story is told.
So I'm Jill Sutherland, and I was curatorial fellow at the Holburne Museum.
What was it about this book that when you saw it you thought this needs to be featured?
I didn't know the museum very well before I started working there, so I was looking around at what the existing displays were. And this book was in a drawer. We opened it up and there's pages missing. That just sort of put a lot of mystery onto the object, I suppose. On the cover of the book, it says William's Plantation, and that is because the plantation in Barbados was originally owned by a Captain John Williams. Guy Ball is written on the front of the book, and Guy Ball is William Holburne's great-grandfather. And the Ball family owned this estate in Barbados in the 1720s, so that's why we have it. And books like this would have been used to, well, they were accounting tools, essentially, to record transactions, sales, basically, of things coming in and out of the plantation at the time. But most disturbingly, they would likely have contained names of enslaved people on the plantation. And so when you think about that and the fact that pages are gone, you know, I don't know, that's quite powerful. That could potentially be painful for quite a lot of people. It's family history that's missing there. I'm of Indian Caribbean heritage. We have Indian ancestry, but much like this book, we don't know the original family name. I think the difficulty has been with thinking about the arts and elegance of that era. You know, what made that possible? What does race have to do with the museum? What does slavery have to do with the museum? But if we look at this book, I think that really does lay it bare.
It feels like a really big and important thing to sort of put on show, at least to contextualise the entire collection.
Well, I like to think of it as creating a dialogue between objects. You know, they are all part of the same story. They are all part of a much bigger story.
My name is Will Cooper. I'm the Curator of Contemporary Programmes and Special Projects at the Holburne Museum, which is a long way of saying I'm the Curator of Contemporary Art.
I really love what you've chosen so much. I just find them so instantly fascinating.
They're sort of really grim.
Yeah.
In a lovely, grim way, if that's the thing. So I grew up in Bath and have been visiting the Holburn since I was little. And I remember being interested in some things and less interested in other things and finding these in a drawer.
Please could you explain to me what they are?
So they're probably smaller than a 5p piece.
Wow.
And circular. And then woven into them in human hair is a skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and what I think is an arrow or a spear in the other hand, and then initials on either side of the skeleton's legs.
So just hearing the line woven into them with human hair is something I feel I should pick up on.
It's not a sentence that you say very often.
No.
They're symbolic of a different attitude towards death we have now. When these were made, sort of in the late 17th century, there was a very long tradition of having memorial things. So memento moris, which this is sort of part of, the remember you will die objects that exist in art and in jewelry to remind you of your mortality. You would wear one to remind you of the loved one that had died, but also a way of having both a public and private mourning. This type of mourning jewelry would have been probably threaded round a ribbon and or maybe worn around your neck or worn as a bracelet on your wrist. There's a great story that Samuel Pepys had 150 of them made for his funeral.
Wow. Like favours.
Exactly like a party favour. And like I have this image of like you get a party bag at the end of Pepys' funeral that has like a Kit Kat and a morning slide in it.
Miniature diary.
Exactly, right?
I'm Chris Stevenson, I'm director of the Holburne Museum in Bath.
When you are thinking about new acquisitions for the museum, how do they kind of fit in relation to the permanent collection?
People think of the Holburne collection as being really focused around what William Holburne collected in the early 19th century, which is sort of kind of European art of the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. But there are other pockets of things in our collection. What we wanted to do was collect a group of objects which would help us better connect the historic collection with the contemporary moment. Pablo Bronstein is a sort of British Argentinian artist, and 2 or 3 years ago we acquired a suite of prints that he made. Pablo's really interested in the Georgian period and having a sort of slightly kind of wry reflection on our fascination with that past. It's in a gallery which is dedicated to sort of art and society of 18th century England, and it's deliberately sort of in there as a kind of disruptive element.
It's really fun to think that you can have a conversation with the objects that is somewhat light-hearted.
My name is Sylvie Brissine and I'm the assistant curator at the Holburne Museum.
Can we talk about the object that you've chosen?
I chose Peter Bruegel the Younger's The Wedding Dance, which he painted in around 1607 to 1614. And it's a scene of a wedding celebration that's happening in a clearing in a forest. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is that ritual of the wedding where the bride and groom dance for the first time.
Yeah.
And this is a completely different, a different type of wedding dance. This is the wedding dance that is happening at about 10:30 at night after everybody's been drinking and eating and having a good time. And, your feet are hurting, so you're sat down. There's lots of humor in this painting. The bagpipers, I think, look really exhausted, which I love because everybody else is having a great time. And then there's these two bagpipers who just look pretty knackered. It's very much the guests that take the centerpiece of this painting. And you're almost, as a viewer, you're almost invited to join them.
It feels almost transgressive to see all these people so close together. Is that what drew you to the painting?
What I love about it is that it does feel so relatable. This could be a scene from today, or it could be a scene from pre-COVID. We've all missed that sense of, having a party, being around people. I think that that's such a universal human need.
How do you see the future of the museum?
To think of the museum as a place that speaks to the current moment, not just about a moment in the past. Each of those objects has a story to tell, its own history. Those other stories, kind of global stories, I'd like to draw out, which I think help make the objects speak more powerfully to the contemporary moment. The plantation book, for example, has a very powerful thing to say at this moment in time.
It's a connection that has to be acknowledged, where that money came from. When you think about basically all of the cities of the United Kingdom, these grand places in the 19th century, and what it means, you know, to move forward with that. And this is not to do down the story of William Holburne at all, but that's such a small story in relation to so many of these things, you know, things that have travelled all around the world, been adjacent to all kinds of historical movements and political events. And then the story that's inadvertently been told has been, and this man bought it on this day, you know.
Exactly. You know, I really want to make at the heart of the Holburne a sense of sort of creativity, to bring out the fact that these objects are all made, they're all the product of a creative process, and draw out that relationship that these aren't just artifacts of the past, they're also products of human work and imagination.